Hey there YouTube, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex Hubbard. I am a senior systems administrator with over 15 years of experience in the IT industry. Today we're going to talk about setting up our Ubiquiti UniFi controller to utilize Radius, NPS, and a certificate authority within your Active Directory environment. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to set all of the infrastructure up for Ubiquiti to utilize. Right, now that we are in our lab, let's go to our domain controller by clicking on Console, open Web Console. The first thing we need to do is create a group to use for our authentication. So let's go to Control Panel, Admin Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers, double click that. And you can go ahead and create your groups wherever you store those. I'm just using the default area because this is our lab. So go ahead and right click in the empty space, click New Group, and we're going to call this Lab Radius Auth Group. Lab Radius Auth. We'll call it that. Try to be descriptive in your names, just because it helps yourself when you come back 6 months from now or when you hand the keys to the kingdom off to another technician. Click OK. Double click this group. Again, put a description in. This group controls access to the Wi-Fi, something along that with Radius. Right? Apply that. We're going to come over to our Members tab here, and we need to add our laptop. I have a physical laptop here on the bench so that I can show you how to, how it works once we're done configuring it. We need to click this Add button. Up here, use this object type. You can see it says Users, Service Accounts, Groups, or Other Objects. Now, normally you would assign a group to a user. This is a little different because we're assigning the group to, or we're assigning the computer account to the group. So we need to change object type, and we need to check off computers. Click OK. And I know the name of the laptop that I have is lab-laptop, right? So we'll put that in. We'll do a check name. Click OK. Boom. We're good there. What we need to do now is come over to our utility server, which is, let's see here. I don't see it in the list. Oh, yeah, it's right there at the top. So we'll click on that. We'll go to Console, and we'll open that up and log into that. And we need to install 3 roles on this server. So open up your Server Manager dashboard and click on Add Roles and Features. We can go to Next. It'll be a role-based or feature-based installation. So click Next there. Just pick your local server. Next. And there are 3 services that we need to install on this machine, and that's Active Directory Certificate Services. Click Add Features. Network Policy and Access Services. Add Features. And Remote Access. So click Next. You can just accept those features, that's fine. Go ahead and click Next. We'll just do the certificate authority. We don't need any of the extra stuff on this particular service or feature. Same thing with this guy. We'll configure this. We'll come back after the fact and configure most of the stuff. This one will only check off direct access and VPN. It's going to ask you to add these features. That's fine. Next. Next. Leave those alone for the IIS web server. And we'll install. Now, you can run the certificate authority on your domain controller. I don't typically like to run anything on my domain controller other than the domain controller services. So that's why I have a utility server or just a universal server that I use for things like this. I try to keep this type of stuff off the domain controller. While this is installing, let's jump over to our firewall. We will need to create a couple of rules here. So let's go to our control panel. And Windows Defender Firewall. We've got to go to Advanced Settings. let's create a new inbound rule here. So right click on it, go to new rule, and we're going to allow a port. So select port. It's going to be a UDP port, and we're going to put, there are 4 port numbers. There's 1812, 1813, 1645, and 1646. These are for allowing communication to the Radius server. Go ahead and click Next. We'll allow the connection. We'll uncheck public because we're not going to use public. Next. And we'll give it a name, allow Radius UDP ports through firewall. $16.46. Again, give it a description. Firewall for Radius access. Click Next, or Finish rather. And now you should see your new rule up here. We've now got our CA role and any of the roles installed that we needed on our utility server. You can see this little icon over here. It says you have notifications. So we'll click that, and we have post-deployment configuration for our Active Directory certificate services. So let's click on Configure, and this should open up the control panel or the configuration wizard for our certificate authority. Give it a second here. I am not going to. This is lab, so I'm just going to use my default admin account. If you are doing this in a production environment, it's probably a wise idea to have a specific account for this. So click Next. This is the only role we have here is certificate authority. So check that off. Give it a second. And we're going to click Next. We want to pick Enterprise CA since we have a domain. If you were doing this without a domain, you could pick standalone CA. You know, either will work, but we're doing it with a domain, so we're going to pick Enterprise CA. We're going to do the root CA since this is the only certificate authority in the environment. Click Next. We want to create a new private key, and you'll want to jot this down because we're going to need this when we set up UniFi. You can pick the, select all the defaults here. That's fine. If you want to tweak these, you can do that as well. I'll leave the default name. Click Next. I do 10 years, that's fine. That way we don't have to worry about it. This is lab. This machine won't be around for 10 years, so you can set it to whatever you want. Click Next. Again, leave the default locations. And just double check all your information and click Configure. It's going to run through. Once we do this, so it's succeeded successfully. Close that. To configure the network policy server, we need to go into Control Panel, Admin Tools, and come down here to this network policy server. We'll double click that. Let's make this big so you guys can see it. First thing we need to do is authenticate this in Active Directory. So right click NPS Local, register server in Active Directory. Click that. Yep, that's fine. Click OK. It's now authorized. We're good. Once we've authenticated our NPS server against or in Active Directory, we need to come over to this standard configuration box here and pull this drop down. And we want to select Radius server for 802.1x wireless or wired connections. Once we've selected that, we'll configure it. So click this configure button down here at the bottom. Select the first radio button here, secure wireless connections. I'm going to roll with the default name for now. Here is where we want to add our access points. So click the add button. I only have one in the lab, so we'll call it lab UAP 01. IP is 10.10.30.103. And we want to give it a shared secret. We'll create our own. Remember what you made it, because you'll need it for UniFi in a minute. Click OK. And there we go. Now we've added our access point to the authentication server, the network NPS server. Click Next. We're going to pull this down here, and we are going to select Protected EAP or PEEP. Click Next. Now we want that group we created earlier. This is where we want to add that. So we can go, what did I call it? I think I called it Lab Radius. Let's do a check name, and it should pull. There we go, Lab Radius Auth. So pull that. Click Next. We're not going to do anything with traffic control, so click Next. And we are done. So now we've just configured our NPS role. Now it should have created this, so under policies, if you go to network policies, it should have created this secure wireless connections policy. We're going to double click this. And this is where we want to go to the conditions tab. And you can see that it has added our Windows group here, Lab Radius Authentication. So click OK, just verify that that's good. All right. One of the final steps that we have to do here is we need to come over to our domain controller, Lab DC01. Let's open up the console here. And we'll go to, oops, send keys, Control-Alt-Delete. Let's log in. We need to create a GPO for the computer. Let's go into our group policy management console here, double click this. You can see my OU, this is where my lab computers are. So my physical laptop is in this group. We're gonna right click, create a GPO. I'm gonna call it Lab Radius Auth GPO. Now we've got the GPO created. Let's go ahead and edit it. Now we want to come down to the security filtering piece here, and we want to add our authentication group. So Lab Radius, oops. Do a check name. So we'll put that there, perfect. And since this is a computer configuration policy, when we go to edit it, so right click on it, edit, we need to go to the computer configuration portion of it. Make this big so you can see. We're going to go arrow down here on policies, Windows settings. Security settings. And we want to go to public key policies. It's kind of buried in here. So click on public key policies. There are two in here that we're going to work on. There's this automatic certificate request settings and certificate services client auto enrollment. Let's do the auto enrollment first. So double click on that. And we want to change the configuration model to enable or enabled. And we'll check off these two checkboxes here and click apply. Click OK. Now come up here to automatic certificate request settings, and we're going to create a new request. So right click in the empty space, new automatic certificate request. We will choose computer and finish. So there we go. Now we've set up the infrastructure in our domain to be able to support Radius authentication in our UniFi server. What we need to do now is jump over to our lab, our physical laptop here, and let's make sure that the group policy is on this machine. So let's go to command, and we will do a gp update space /force, and this will pull down. This will tell the computer to go out to the domain controller and pull down any of the latest policies. Now, a computer policy doesn't come down or doesn't take effect until you reboot. So we'll have to reboot this machine in order to get the policy down. So go ahead. Let's do a shutdown-r-t-0. So this will reboot it right now, and we'll come back once it's rebooted and verify that the policy is now on the machine. Our lab laptop has rebooted. Let's open up a command prompt again. And this time we'll do a gp result /r, which will show you all the GPOs applied to this machine. And it goes quick, so you gotta pay attention here. We'll scroll up. And you should see 2 policies. Yep, lab radius authentication GPO and the default domain policy. We've configured our infrastructure within our domain. We've verified that the GPO is now on our lab laptop. The last piece of this puzzle is to go into our UniFi controller and configure UniFi to allow radius authentication. Let's go to our UniFi server here, lab UniFi 01. Open up the console. And we're gonna type in our password. So I'm already in our controller here. We'll come down to settings. And this is site specific, so if you have multiple sites, you'll have to do it for each site. And we want to go to profiles and create a new radius profile. So we'll call this lab radius. And here we have to add the IP address of our utility server. So I gotta remember what that is. Okay, 10.10.30.5. Yep, that's fine. Oops. And change the 2 ports. And this is where we are going to need to remember our shared secret. We also enable authentication, accounting. So it's on the same server. And this will be 1645. And this will be 1646. And again, the same secret. Cool. So click Save. Now we've just created this profile. Let's go over to our wireless networks. And I've already got an SSID set up, so we'll click Edit. And we need to do WPA Enterprise. So now that key goes away, and we've got to pull our profile here. So lab radius, and we'll click Save. Let's save that. Cool. So now we should be able to come back over to our lab laptop here, and let's check this out. I'm going to disconnect my Ethernet cable from it. And we'll do a ping to verify that I am not connected to anything. Oops, what did we grab here? Oh, all right, it connected to my internal Wi-Fi, which is not what we wanted. So let's disconnect that, make sure we're not connected. Cool. Now this may take a minute to get a certificate or request a certificate from the certification authority server on our utility server. First I was running into it was not connecting. So this is what you should see. So we'll click the connect button and it should connect and we should get an IP address. There we go. Cool, we're connected. So let's go IP config. There we go, 10.10.30.104. Let's ping out to the internet, and there we go. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This one's probably one of the longer ones that I've done on the channel, and there's quite a bit of moving parts to it. I've not found, this is kind of a mesh of multiple different guides that I have found, and I use this in my enterprise environment, and I wanted to pass along this information because it gives you a lot more control over access to your wireless environment should you be using Ubiquiti. So there's a little bit of a complicated process to get it set up and running, but it works very, very well, and you don't have to give people passwords, and you can revoke access, etc. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe below. If there's something you want to know or something you want to see, let me know. I'm always looking for ideas for the channel. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more IT-related videos.